Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next order of business, I will now ask the city clerk to commence with a roll call.
Sunday Black.
Present.
Jeffrey Green. Here. William Colo. Here. Chairman Charles Pagano Jr.
Present.
William Bizzuto, Vice Chairman. Present. Norberto Rodriguez Jr. Here. Michael Salvio. Here. Joyce Templeton. 8 here. Everyone's here.
Thank you. Next order of business, the commission were supplied minutes from the last 3 minutes. I'm assuming that everyone has gone through them. May I have a motion of approval or?
A motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
Any questions, concerns, comments? So carried. The minutes are approved. Next is Attorney Casagrande.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It seems like we were here just last week. Just a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to hand up through the chair. The agenda for next week's meeting and also the waivers of service for next week's meeting, which the record will indicate have been signed by all commissioners. The next item I'd like to hand up is, as we did last week, just let me, for the record, make clear that out in the hallway, there are wall-sized copies of Dr. Morrison's Draft Plan 3, which he's going to go through tonight, as well as his Draft Plan 3 showing neighborhoods. So those are both out in the hallway. Just for the record, I'd like to enter as Exhibit 14, an 11 by 17 copy of wall-sized district Draft Plan 3. And that would be Exhibit 14. I also would like to hand up 8+1 copies of Exhibit 15, which for the record is an 8.5 by 11 version of Dr. Morrison's Draft Plan 3. And I also would like to note for the record that my associate, Attorney Harrison, has copies of that for the public who wish to see them. So anybody who wants to see them, we can just pass those out. Peter will pass those out. The next thing I'd like to hand up to the record is Exhibit 16, which is an 8.5 by 14 version of Draft Plan 3. Again, this shows the neighborhood boundaries. And so I'm handing up 8+1 of that. And also Attorney Harrison has copies of that for the public as well. The next item I'd like to hand up for the record is Exhibit 17, which is a copy of Dr. Morrison's PDF presentation tonight. So I'm handing up 8+1 of those, and also Attorney Harrison has copies of that PDF for those members of the public who'd like to see that as well. The next thing I'd like to hand up is copies of Exhibits 18 through 26 and Exhibits WS 9 and 10. Just so you know, WS means website submissions that we've received since last time. So that's in this packet. And just for the record, I'll just read off what the 18 through 25 are. Exhibit 18 are comments from Pastor Rodney Wade. Exhibit 19 is comments by Commissioner Green. Exhibit 20 is comments by Commissioner Green, a second set of comments from Commissioner Green. 21 is comments by Commissioner Rodriguez. 22 is comments by Mr. Robert Petro. 23 is comments by Mr. Charles Corretto. 24 are comments by Chairman Pagano. And 25 are comments by Commissioner Black. So all those will, I'd ask that they be entered into the record. And the last thing I would like to hand up is A+1 of a memorandum authored by myself and Attorney Randy DeBella from my office. And this is in response to the legal advisory opinions that you asked us to comment on. And as soon as I'm done, I'm going to ask Attorney DeBella to with the chair's permission, address the commission and briefly summarize those opinions. And after that, we'll turn it over to Dr. Morrison for his presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Randall DeBella. I'm a partner at Kramer & Anderson. I'm a partner of Dan's. And I was tasked by Dan with reviewing and researching the issues that you identified in some of the past meetings. In the memorandum that is Exhibit 26, it's relatively comprehensive. It contains many statutory citations and things of that nature. There's one case that's cited, and there's a rationale that is expressed, which should go to conclusion in addressing your concerns. I'll go seriatim in the order in which the memorandum is stated, and I'll be very brief. The issue that came up, apparently a significant issue, had to do with the charter provision regarding the limitation of membership or of being from representation of a particular party within the context of the charter on the Board of Aldermen. That provision is outlined that charter provision is outlined in the first sentence of the memorandum. That provision is legal. The concern that was expressed was that it was not, but it is. There's a preclusion of the third member being from a party that is identical to the two members, to another two members. So only two members of one political party, one major party, can serve in any district. That's what your charter provision says, and that is a legal provision. The issue that comes up, and it's an ancillary one, but it's an important one, has to do with how you handle a petitioning candidate who is an enrollee of a party when two of the party candidates have been elected. A petitioning candidate is a statutory creature. There's a provision in the general statutes that outlines and prescribes the method and means in which a petitioner becomes a petitioning candidate. In that provision, the petition application, which is required, is furnished through the Secretary of State's office. That application is devoid of any party designation. Thus, when a person petitions or files an application to become a petitioning candidate, irrespective of what they're enrolled in, they are not a member of that party. To be from that party, and they're not running as an endorsed member of that party. That rationale is followed throughout the statutory scheme, in which, and was, as a matter of fact, employed in a case in this city, and that was Harris against Mulcahy. And in that case, the trial court adopted that rationale by saying that when you are an unaffiliated petitioning candidate, that means you are not an endorsed candidate. If you're not an endorsed candidate, you are existing as an unaffiliated candidate. And that's the rationale, what we call in the law, the ratio decidendi, the rationale of the decision, which explicitly is supported by the statutory scheme. So it's our opinion that this provision is legal, that a petitioning candidate is not from any party, irrespective of true petitioning candidate, is not from any party, irrespective of whom they might be enrolled with. And therefore, this provision is workable and is legal, rational, and supported by the statutory scheme and the dearth of case law that we do have. Part and parcel of that has to do with the supermajority issue. There are provisions in the charter that talk about when you need a supermajority in a situation of certain votes. The Charter Revision Commission issued a report, and in that report, it provided a plan. And that plan is what was voted on by the voters and is now the law for the city of Waterbury. There are necessary proportional adjustments that are required simply because of the way that this new representation, this citywide representation by district is required. Only 2 members in each from one party in each district. That would require an adjustment as to the definition of a supermajority by reality, because a supermajority is no longer based upon an at-large scheme. If the candidates are at large, it's simple to find a supermajority. It may not be so simple in a situation where there's districting. So the reality is that there's what we term as proportional adjustment would have to be required so as to have the effect that's required under the charter, and that can be done. The other issue that came up had to do with polling places, and that is something that we exhaustively researched to try to find an answer to, and the reality of it, and the law, is that the exclusive authority to determine polling places rests with the registrars of voters. It's not an aldermanic problem. It's certainly not this commission's problem. So once the districts are set, they're not set based upon where it's convenient vis-a-vis to have the polls. The polling places that are convenient have to be determined, found, and essentially assigned by the registrars. The Secretary of State's office has confirmed this, elections enforcement, because we did our research, of course, but we also contacted elections enforcement. And the statutory scheme for that, there are 2 statutes that are material, and they're in your memorandum, provide that there is a protocol and a procedure that the registrars follow, and it's their exclusive authority to determine that. So in the event there's cross-districting or there's issues within that, there are ways to address that, including a finding by the registrar of perhaps there have to be 2 voting machines or ballots or things of that nature. But this is something that the registrars will have to be put to work on, and that's irrespective of this commission, because this commission is bound and determined, it has to, by law, is bound to find a districting plan. Once that districting plan is found, it's up to the registrars to find polling places. And it's within the convenience of most of the citizenry. So that answers that question. There was another issue regarding wards versus districts. We had discussions with the registrars regarding whether or not we had to address an issue regarding wards. Well, when you take a look at the case law and the statutes, the statutory scheme treats wards and districts essentially interchangeably. It's really depending upon how your charter reads, whether they call it a ward or whether you call it a district. They're one and the same. So a ward essentially means a division. A district is the same thing. In our charter, and your charter, the Waterbury Charter, there is a provision that says that we're districts. You have districts here. And therefore, you do not have to concern yourself with the term ward. As a matter of fact, throughout the statutes, when you look at districting, or you look at voting places, it talks about wards or districts in the disjunctive. So it's not something that we have to worry about. And so that's remedied by virtue of the statutory scheme. So those are the tasks that I was assigned. That's the conclusions that I've come to, and I believe they're all supportable and supported by law. Be happy to take any questions.
Jeffrey Green.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman. Just to back up to the item A with the party affiliation issue.
Sure.
The language there says, of the 3 aldermen elected by each district, no more than 2 shall be from one political party. Now, I understand when they're running as a petitioning candidate, they will not have party affiliation. They'll be on their own line, so on and so forth. But when they start to serve, would they need to then become an unaffiliated voter, or would they be able to enjoy a political party at that point?
It's my suggestion that a rule, an aldermanic rule might be in place concerning caucusing at that time. But they would still remain an unaffiliated member of the Board of Aldermen. That's how that's intended to be. Now, there are a couple of issues that come up, one of which is there should be, and there's going to be a recommendation made, that there be an ordinance that's enacted. And that is, if you're a petitioning candidate and you want to switch your party, you can't do that. You are not going to be able to do an end run around that. So no, you are a petitioning candidate. You are an unaffiliated member of the Board of Aldermen. Although you might be enrolled in one major party, you have no party authority for whatever that's worth. Now, obviously, you're going to take a position as you want to take a position. You're essentially, in the small I term, an independent person at that point. So that's how you will remain. Through the chair.
I didn't hear you.
No, I used the term independent with the small I interchangeably with unaffiliated. In other words, you're independent of any political party.
Do any of my fellow commissioners have any other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The next item is Dr. Morrison's presentation.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, good evening. I'm glad we got the difficult business behind us now. Tonight I'm going to update you on my progress in the past week on the transitioning to a new election system. And here are the topics I'm going to cover. I'm going to introduce my new draft plan number 3, which is a very slight fine-tuning of the one that you saw last week, and show you its demographic parameters. Second, I'm going to focus in on clarifying what some of the clarifying what the demographic constraints are on modifications that have been proposed, so you understand how I'm looking at the things that people are saying they'd like me to consider doing, and I'm lining them up against kind of barriers that I see or opportunities. And finally, I'm going to update the commissioners and the public on the changes that I was asked to do. I'm going to go through them individually and basically inform you what was asked and what I think can or cannot be done. So let's just quickly go through the demographic constraints. One constraint is you have to have more or less equal population in each of the 5 districts. You know that. Secondly, you have told me unambiguously that you want districts to be comprised of whole neighborhoods. In other words, the geographic building blocks should, insofar as possible, be whole neighborhoods, not pieces of census geography that I would normally work with. And what you saw in the first plan where I had created the exquisitely perfect hypothetical plan that would insulate you completely from any litigation, but bore no resemblance to the world you live in. And third, I'm going to talk about boundary choices that you want to essentially avoid, boundary choices that might be construed as diluting minority voting strength. And I say construed because it doesn't mean that you intended to, but if it has that effect, that's how you get into trouble. So let's start with the neighborhoods. These are the neighborhoods as I understand them. And these red boundaries are what are overlaid on the big map outside. And for those of you who have trouble seeing where these boundaries are in a particular neighborhood that you care about, the city's GIS department has created these large maps as PDF files, which if you download one from the website, I believe you will be able to basically keep enlarging it until you get right into where you are, and then you'll see a lot of the detail. None of this stuff really is terribly visible even on the wall size map, but you can look at your own neighborhood in great detail and see where the lines are. And I should say that when you look at the lines, sometimes they don't correspond exactly with a street or a particular road where you could say, well, I'm on the other side of that road. There are some ambiguities here, and part of that, I think, because we've had trouble with the census geography in a few places, I think what this is just this has been sort of your understanding of more or less where the boundaries are, but nobody has updated them to 2010 census geography because there was no reason to until now. So here is draft plan 3, and I do want you to sort of focus in on how closely, I think almost exactly, the boundaries will follow those little thin dashed red lines. That is to say, each of these districts is composed of whole neighborhoods. That was the effort to do what you wanted. Now let's turn to the demographics of it, the parameters, and I'm going to highlight the things that I regard as important features. Just again to acquaint you with what's going on here for those few who may not have been here before. On the left side, you've got the aldermanic districts that I'm proposing, 1 through 5. You've got the total population. That's what is supposed to be more or less equal in each district. 110,366 citywide divided by 5. Ideally, should be 22,073. And then if you look at the third column from the left, it says deviation from ideal. The first district is only is less than 1% too small, so it's very close to being perfect. The second one is just slightly over. Third district is nearly 5% too small, 4.77. The fourth district has got 5% too many. And so you add the 4.77 and the 5.09, ignoring the sign, and at the bottom, that 9.86 is the magic number that says you're just inside the 10% limit where the light turns from green to yellow. Now, I want you to really focus in on what I've tried to accomplish here. First of all, in the percent Hispanic column, that percentage that's circled, 46.2, that says that 46.2 of the eligible voters in my proposed District 5 are Hispanic. And one column over, again, the percentage that's circled, 30.5% of the eligible voters in District 2 are black. And these are numbers that are based on the voting age citizen population, not the total population. And then another column to the right, which is everyone else. Now, I want to remind you that the comparable figures that Mr. Butler had for his plan, he had, if you look on the lower sort of left where I've got the 9.86 just bumping up against the 10% limit, Mr. Butler had a much more evenly balanced plan in terms of total population. It was 2.13%, so he was very near perfection. I'm up against the upper limit, but in one sense it's a binary distinction. You can be very good, and not so good just as long as you're not bad. So I'm not so good, but I'm not bad, and Mr. Butler's plan was very good on that.
Were those using the same data sets, or were they coming from two different sources of data?
No, they're the identical data sets.
Okay.
I mean, I took his plan and I reconstructed
Okay.
it. So we have the same 110,366 people citywide. Now, in a sense, you could say the benefit of my letting that total deviation go up to 9.86, getting me into the upper limits of the flexibility that I'm accorded by the Voting Rights Act, the benefit of that is that whereas Mr. Butler had the black share of voting age citizens was 30.0, I've cranked it up a half a percentage point to 30.5. Not much to get excited about, but I can say that I attempted to get it to the highest level I could, given the constraint that I had to use neighborhoods. And if you look at the percent Hispanic, where I've got 46.2, his plan had it at 45.8. So an Hispanic plaintiff looking at this could say, well, I'm glad Morrison did what he did. I like that one better, although it's not a big difference. And I do think you have a choice here. I mean, I'm not bad-mouthing Mr. Butler's proposal. He got it right in really very close to right in all three dimensions. But if you want to know, is one plan marginally better than the other in terms of concentrating each of the protected groups in the city, I would say that mine has the edge by a slight amount. And also, the other, I think, more important point is that Mr. Butler did not, intentionally did not try to work out the neighborhood problem. He just said, here's an easy way to do it, came up with a really good plan, and that's kind of what got us launched in this direction, which I think is a good thing. And so I would, sort of say that we've come the full distance now. The descendant of Mr. Butler's plan, which is my draft proposal number 3, presents you with, I think, a viable choice, and I'm going to show you some of the interesting features of this that I think make it a viable choice. First of all, you've got one district where Hispanics can say, although we're not a 50% majority, we're close to it. And this is certainly a district in which you're going to have to pay attention, a lot of attention to Hispanics if you want to get elected. Although you could say that Hispanics technically would not control this district if everyone else voted for someone else. But obviously, it's not going to take a whole lot of crossover vote to get that 46 up to 50%. Then you've got the 30.5%, but look to the left and look to the right. You've got an equal proportion of Hispanics in this 30.5% black district, which I submit is the best one that I can craft for blacks, but it also is what I would call a weak influence district for Hispanics. So an Hispanic looking at this in a us versus them perspective could say, hey, we got a district where we're, as a practical matter, we could probably win elections there almost all the time. And we got another district where we matter as much as blacks do, and we have an opportunity to form coalitions with blacks or coalitions with all others, or there could be a three-way coalition. So there are lots of, this is a structure that fosters all sorts of possibilities for candidates who, while they're running in running for the voters in Aldermanic District 2, could be blending partly responsiveness to the issues of those residents, but also perhaps framing some larger citywide issues. So it gives you a nice balance, a kind of a hybrid of you're thinking not just about the district and its residents, but you've got some things to say about the city. So lots of possibilities there, and I think that's a strong selling point. Now, let me talk about the context that I see for addressing any modifications that might be suggested going forward, and we got basically only one more week to go. The first thing I want you to understand is that demographic constraints preclude swapping any neighborhoods at all into or out of Districts 2 or District 5. A number of people have said, well, I'd like to propose that we move this neighborhood out of District 5 and swap it out with another neighborhood and to make up the population. And the answer is this is essentially territory you have to keep your hands off of, because anything you do to it could be construed as diluting the voting strength of either Hispanics or blacks. And you're just going to have to take my word for that now, but I'm going to show you some pictures that will make you see why that's the case. The second contextual factor, which is something you don't really need to worry about, but I just want you to be aware of it, is that some of the boundaries of these neighborhoods don't exactly match the 2010 census geography, and it really doesn't matter to me, but it matters to people who look at the map and they say, well, I see a little piece of yellow kind of bleeding into green, and what's going on here? You know, where exactly is the boundary? And my answer is, for demographic accounting purposes, I use census geography, and the boundary I have to use is when your boundary splits a census block where there might be 100 people, I say, well, those 100 people are either to the left or to the right of the boundary, but I don't know how many of them are in one district versus the other, because the block is where they count people. And I would say, for the most part, you should mark these down as phantom problems. They're phantoms in the sense that if I'm wrong in allocating the block to one or the other district, it's not going to make any real difference, because 100 people or 50 people isn't going to matter, but on the map it doesn't look nice. And one of the derivative recommendations I would make after this is all over is that you have your GIS department go over the boundaries and bring them in the few places where they don't match, bring them into accordance with the census geography, so this won't be a problem going forward with the next census, which will be in just 6 years. Third, I just wanted to tell you that in terms of the registrars, I spoke with them both, and they said basically, we're going to have to completely overhaul everything. We're going to have to just we're going to have to identify new polling places where people go to vote, based not just on the demographics, but based also on what they know about where the registered voters are, because they're talking about not the population that I'm talking about, they're talking about people who are going to show up and say, I want a ballot to vote. And so it's a matter of scaling and locating those so that they have a more or less even distribution. And so they said, no matter what you do, and no matter what we tell you about maybe saving us a little effort, there's nothing you can do to help us. It's going to be a complete overhaul. So they're going to completely overhaul it. And then what I want you to understand is that the way they're going to deal with elections for aldermen, where you would have, let's say, as Mr. Pagano had suggested, I live here and I'll be voting in House District so-and-so and Aldermanic District so-and-so. Down the street, my neighbor will be voting in the same Aldermanic District, but he'll be voting in a different House District. How does that work? Does he have to go to a different place? The answer is no. What will happen is you both go to the same place, and there will be different flavors of ballots, one for Mr. Pagano and one for his neighbor. And Mr. Pagano won't be able to vote for the House person that his neighbor votes for, and his neighbor won't be able to vote for the House person in the House election that Mr. Pagano votes for. So it's all done by the magic of they just have to print up more ballots, which is a reasonable way to do it, I guess. And in fact, there's a Connecticut statute that authorizes them to do that. So it's, and they said, that's the way we want to do it. Don't worry about us. We're fine. So let me talk, I want to help you understand, this is a little bit more of the education, spoon feeding of the demographic constraints on choosing a plan. And what I'm going to show you are some maps, and I just want you to get the orientation here. This is a map that shows the density of Hispanics among the citizen voting age population. Wherever you see green, that's where the majority of Hispanic the majority of eligible voters are Hispanic. Wherever you see yellow, that's where at least 35 and as many as 50% of the citizen voting age population is Hispanic. So together, where you see green and yellow, and it all sort of blends together, and it is kind of looking like a region, that's what I need to capture. And if I leave pieces of that out, or if, for example, if you look at East Mountain, which is on the bottom center, with one little tiny fragment of 50% Hispanic, it's probably just a few dozen people. If I were to put that East Mountain into District 5, where I've got Hispanics concentrated, and then take out another one, I will be, in effect, swapping out a more Hispanic area for a less Hispanic area, and that could be construed as vote dilution under the guise of saying, well, we were trying to satisfy neighborhood preferences. Now, I'm going to do an exercise I'm going to go back and forth so you can see, and what I want you to focus on is just the pink. And you'll see how the pink kind of covers the really heavy areas. And remember, I've got to have it pretty much the same number of people, and it's also got to be made up of whole neighborhoods. So I don't have a whole lot of wiggle room here. So that's how the pink District 5 came out. And this is just a crude rendition to show you how that overlaps with kind of where the continuous, heavily concentrated territory is. So now that I've got the Hispanic concentration district, District 5, I need to concentrate blacks in another district. And I'm going to show you the same thing for the black citizen voting age population. And I want you to focus now just on District 2, which is the green one. Here's the green. Here's where the blacks are concentrated. Now, you notice the problem I've got. I've got a lot of territory that is in the Hispanic district, but it's also got a significant number of blacks. So having created the Hispanic territory as best I can, I'm now saying, well, where can I connect with a large concentration of blacks? And as you keep looking at that green, you see I've picked up quite a bit of it in the southern end of it, and then I've extended it north to pick up what I could grab. And if you say, well, what about that stuff to the west, the northwest, where there's a lot of blacks there? If I put them in, then I would have too many people. So I have to make sort of a compromise that gives me both an Hispanic district and a black district, and cranks the numbers up to about as high as I think I can get them. What it amounts to is this is a gigantic jigsaw puzzle, and there are different ways of doing this, but once you get to where you think you're about at the maximum, if you change anything around, then you get a domino effect, and then it kind of dissolves itself into a whole new complicated problem where you have to start from scratch. So what I'm saying is that I think this is your best way to go, and I think it has the virtue of making a marginal improvement over what Mr. Butler's plan has, and also has the stronger virtue of really accomplishing what you had in mind, which is to keep your neighborhoods whole, which I believe is the case, except for some of these anomalies that we have. Now, I'm going to show you some examples of anomalies here. This is your neighborhood boundaries not always matching 2010 census geography. Now, you see this area here. The Census Bureau, or you have your boundary right down the middle of that between East End and Fairlawn. The Census Bureau has said we have a whole lot of territory just to the east of that, and that is a cemetery, as it turns out. We didn't know what it was, but they have to account for all the territory. You know, their position is if it's not a census block, we haven't got wall-to-wall coverage of census geography, then there's a place where somebody might live. And you have to tell them they're all there, but they're no longer alive, but that's the way they have to account for geography. So what we have here is a picture of, if you're just I don't know if you can see the very faint green circle in the center, but your boundary in black, I'm sorry, your East End neighborhood, which is bounded in black, that tan area is where one part of census geography ends, and there's a whole big census block that picks up the remaining green territory within that little dogleg of black boundary, plus the entire cemetery. So I have a choice of either showing East End neighborhood going sort of up to the black boundary with your, faith that I've accounted for all the people, because the only people who live in that cemetery plus green area live in the green area to the west of the cemetery. They don't live in the cemetery. But if I were to include that block, then I would be getting a major distortion that would actually come up against the Reedville neighborhood, and it actually looks like it might even intersect. And then it would leave a piece of green on the bottom. It'd be a big mess. You look at it and say, what's going on here? And I say, well, I'm just showing you census geography. So it's kind of like a sleeping dog. You just let it lie. We've got the people in the right place, and it would be nice if you got your boundaries right up against that brown area so that you and the Census Bureau are on the same page. But as I say, it's a phantom problem. It doesn't really exist except in the minds of the census geographers. I guess that's the one I'm circling there. Now, here we have another anomaly. I don't know if it's going to show up or not, but the boundary between Booley Manor and Berkeley Heights. Not sure you can actually see it on the screen, but again, there is a very faint sort of blue thin lines which don't show so well on the screen, but those are the census geography, and the census geography here does not correspond to your boundaries at all easily. If we were to use census geography, you'd say you don't have our neighborhoods here at all. You've got, they're all distorted, but there's an explanation again. So what we're saying is, imagine that these are the boundaries. We're accounting for the populations very closely. The census geography has it that there is some industrial area, and I think there's a big school in the lower right-hand part of Berkeley Heights. Those of you who live there will know what it is. And that's not an area where there are a whole lot of people living, and nonetheless, we're going to include, we're going to pretend that we have the part of it that has the people in it, because that's where you drew the line. But again, my recommendation would be to say align it with the census geography. Again, these are not going to make a big difference. Now, while we're at it, I want you to keep in mind, you see that Booley Manor is in one district and Berkeley Heights is in another, and there are some people who are talking about changing things around, and the East End neighborhood, we, again have a census geography problem where it looks like we haven't included it all, but there is a mismatch on the eastern part where the brown turns into the green, where if we put in the next census block, then it would look even messier. So to sum up, the plan starting point is your historic neighborhood communities. That's what you said matters the most. Each district is within 1/5 of the city's total population, sufficiently to pass muster. My version of this plan maintains Hispanic and black voting strength, I think, as best you can, given the emphasis on neighborhoods. And if anybody says, well, Hispanic and black voting, the concentration of Hispanics and blacks should be higher because it could have been higher, my answer would be, I tried that the first time, I showed it to them, and it was unanimously rejected by both blacks and Hispanics who came to the microphone. I like being in that position to say I showed it to them, and everybody said they didn't like that plan. They want to go to neighborhoods, and so I think you're entitled to. The strong arguing point is that what I have done is given you a plan that enables racial and ethnic coalitions, and it balances other traditional redistricting criteria. So I think I've kind of checked everything off, saying, well, I'm prepared to walk into court, testify on your behalf, and say, I think I did the right thing based on what they told me and what the census data showed, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. Now, let me go into sort of the changes that you had suggested, because I want to focus on those. And this is the list of changes that I have logged, I think, in the last week. Chairman Pagano was concerned about the polling places, and he said he'd like to have some delineation and discussion on that. And I think I've covered that point by telling you that the registrars prefer to wait until a plan is adopted, and that they then view it as a complete overhaul that they will do. A second comment from Commissioner Green, who basically, if I have it correct, and you can tell me if I'm misstating this, you were basically talking about swapping out two pieces of territories, to sort of equalize things. You were saying that you would like to put Hamilton Park, which I couldn't really tell where that was, but Booley Manor, into the 4th district from the 5th district, and then fill out the population there by putting East Mountain into the 5th district. That was basically, that was the substance of it. And the way to understand this is that what you're asking is to take the Hispanic district, which we've got cranked up to 46% or so, and take Booley Manor, which is 31% Hispanic, take that out, which is lower than what the district has. So you say, well, we could take 31% out, it was 46. But then you're going to be putting in East Mountain, and East Mountain is only 6% Hispanic. So when you do that swap, you take a more Hispanic area out and put in a less Hispanic area, that would, I think, constitute a plaintiff's definition of cracking. So it's an instance where you're, and perhaps more than just you, but I think there was at least one other person who spoke on this, the preference to have an individual's, some neighborhoods kind of moved around to make it a little more like the way the world should be, or the way your world is, unfortunately, has the effect of creating Hispanic vote dilution, or at least one could assert that that was the effect, and that was your hidden agenda, or that was somebody's hidden agenda. So we could do it, but it's not a wise thing to do for that reason, and only that reason. So that is my answer to your suggestion and the reason that I did not do it. Commissioner Sunday Black she explained to me that the problem was that a lot of people were looking at these maps and they say, I live in this neighborhood, I can't see where the streets are, and this is purely a technical problem that any adolescent could explain to us, that you just take the PDF and you have to take that PDF file that you download from the city's website, and you'll be getting the version that's hanging out on the chart there, and you put it up on your screen and you keep enlarging it, and the PDF is a high-grain resolution, a high-resolution rendition, and when you get to your particular neighborhood that you're interested in, you say, I want to see where those boundaries are in my neighborhood, you'll actually be able to see the streets and read what the street names are. They're actually there in print that none of us can read on a map. So I think that answers the question that you had. So anybody who wants to see a particular neighborhood, just keep pushing the plus button until you can get to the point where your whole screen is filled with just your neighborhood.
But you're making the assumption that they have that capability of doing that they have a computer to do that.
Yeah, I am. Or they can come in and I guess they can go into the city's GIS department and say, could you bring it up on one of your 20 by 40 screens for me to see?
Right, so the request was that you would outline current state, the neighborhoods and the streets on a document, and then your proposed state showing what neighborhoods were currently in that area and what neighborhoods were moved out of that area. So that,
What do you mean by area? The neighborhoods
So-
are fixed, that's what I'm...
right, so when you say you move certain streets or certain different streets out, so when you look at, for example, 72nd District, when you pull up your map on your, the map, you
Yeah.
know how you have the streets listed here? The ask of you was to show what the current state is and then what the future state proposal looks like based on the streets. That's what the ask.
Okay, I think you're saying the current state being what House Assembly District they're in, or what?
Hollis District right now.
I mean, every neighborhood is a fixed entity.
I understand that.
And you're saying that a neighborhood was pulled out of a House district and put into another House district? Is that what you mean?
This is what they want to visualize that.
Yeah.
So if you move something, then they want to see where it was
Okay.
taken from and moved. So,
Okay,
and
well-
this came from not just folks who have computers, but folks who don't have computers.
Okay, what I'm saying is, I didn't move anything out of anything, but I just took things and aggregated them together into districts. That's what I did. But if people want to see this in greater detail, there's definitely a technical solution to this. What's needed is either a very big screen on a computer console in the town, or the town's GIS department could, I believe, could just simply print out maps that show for neighborhood A, neighborhood B, neighborhood C, show where they were in terms of house districts on a map, and then where they are now, and just have something, let's say, this big printed out just for each neighborhood. That would be, I would refer that to the town GIS, or the city's GIS department to do that.
No, but Dr. Morrison, I think Sunday's getting to, maybe I'm wrong, but if there was a street that was, say, in the 72nd, and now it falls under the 73rd, say,
Yeah.
that's what they want to see.
That would be something that the city's GIS department would have to, so I mean, they can take, if you're saying you want to have every street in the city.
No. You drew lines, correct? So
Right.
what was the previous existing 72nd may now not include
Oh.
something that was there.
The only lines I drew were proposed aldermanic
So
district lines.
none of those streets are out of the existing districts? Is that what you're saying?
I guess what I'm saying is, the only thing that I have done is I have drawn aldermanic districts. I have not dealt with other levels of geography. I mean, I know what they are, and people would print on maps, but that was not something that I dealt with, other than to say that if it happens to be the case that we can follow a boundary, there's a statute that says you should try to do that. And in trying to do that, I do the neighborhood thing, and if it happens to fall on one of those, it's a good thing. But those are all different levels of political geography that don't bear on anything that I've done. But what I'm saying is, it's possible to do what, if people are having difficulty visualizing this, there's definitely a way to help them visualize it. But I'm not the guy to do it. And you certainly don't want it to be an Excel spreadsheet. I think you want to have a visual representation, and that's what the city's GIS department will be really good at, because they have a very well, the maps that you're getting are very well designed, and they can go in and take, a quarter of a square inch and say, would you like to see that blown up to this size with all the streets and everything else, and show any house district boundary or any other boundary you want. That's what their GIS system would be able to do for you. And I think, if anyone's having trouble visualizing this, I'm confident that...
Let me just give you an example from where I come from, a just simple layman's term. What was shaded for, let's say I was in the 71st district, the west end of town, now ends up, say, in the 73rd district of town, the shading.
All right.
Does that mean that the representative or the senator or whoever I had now has changed? Because I am no longer...
No, I don't believe so. I mean, that's a separate level of political geography.
So what's the purpose of the shading then? If nothing changes?
Are you talking about...
Here's the concern. If I'm sitting here, I want to know, did my voting district change for any of to Chairman Pagano's point, state rep, congressional, whatever?
Right.
Did any of that change based on the shading of the 5 areas that you drew? I know you're saying you didn't move neighborhoods, but the shading is what is throwing people off. They want to know what changed in my life.
Okay, what changed in my life? That will be something that the registrars will be able to inform you of, because they will be able to tell you for a particular person who, let's say I'm saying, you are now in Aldermanic District, proposed Aldermanic District 4. And they're saying, well, what has changed for me in terms of other districts I'm in? And it's my understanding, if I've got this right, that you'll still be voting for the same, in the same House district, you'll still be voting in the same Senate district. I don't
It's just
see
the
that-
Aldermanic district, you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just saying, all it's
Right.
saying is that in addition to everybody else you used to vote for,
Right.
this is the particular Aldermanic district you're voting in, nothing else has changed.
And yet, and the polling places would stay the same, but we would be giving a different choice of candidates at that polling place for your district. Correct?
The second part of your answer is correct, but the first part is not necessarily so.
Oh,
The polling places, what's going to happen, as I understand it from the registrars, is they are going to look at the additional problem they have now of holding aldermanic elections, and they're going to say, we have to deal with X number of registered voters coming in to vote for aldermen, as well as everything else they used to vote for. So they're going to say, well, where are the registered voters? And it may be that the registered voters are the same place they were before.
Right.
The only thing is that when I come in, I'm going to say, by the way, I need to vote for Aldermanic District number 3, and they're going to say, well, for you, the ballots we give out, you're going to get the number 3 one, but it's going to be the same location
Same
unless
location.
they adjust it.
and that's the key, so.
Yeah. I think my understanding is that they didn't want to change anything till they saw the plan, and if I had never come along, they would still be holding elections in the same places. Now they're going to say, but for you, we have a special ballot.
So polling issues are not our problem on this commission. We are just
Definitely,
basically
yeah.
designing new aldermanic districts based upon the public.
Yeah, and I think, I can understand there's confusion on this, but unless I'm misunderstanding this, nothing changes in anybody's life, but everything changes in the registrar's life. They have to print up 2 ballots.
Without that clarity ahead of time, none of us really understood that. Now we got it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because I printed up a blue one. Now, what we're looking at today is the shaded area, and we really ignore all the lines that are on here.
You want to look at the different colors. Those
Well,
are the
I got to pull it up.
Yeah, right, the different colors, and hopefully you have the neighborhood boundaries in the red. Do you have red, little?
Red,
Okay.
yes. That's
Then-
neighborhood boundaries.
Right. So if you look at those red lines, you'll notice how the shaded color areas, the green, the orange, the purple, you'll notice that the boundaries between those colors should invariably follow the little red dotted lines. And that means that their boundaries are neighborhood boundaries. I mean, this is not it's a hard thing to visualize because there's a lot of information on these things, and you're
Right.
not the only
So,
one.
I mean, what we're looking at, basically, the 5 different districts is the color shaded area.
Correct.
And
Correct.
then now we look at the lines and see how they have moved. Or, I mean, in comparison to the shaded area.
Yeah, you should focus on the shaded areas, focus on the different colors, and then say, is there anything about the boundaries between those colored areas that looks familiar? And it should be, well, I see that when I go from green to orange, I'm going from one neighborhood to another neighborhood.
Okay.
And precisely at the border. And I think part of the difficulty in visualizing this is that there's the added layer of the House districts that people are thinking of as important neighborhoods. And I would just say, whatever House district you were in, you're still in it. It's just I haven't shown it on the map.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps or not. Do you have any other questions on this point? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to Miss Rachel Guest.
Please move on.
Pardon? Okay. Rachel Guest, who submitted on the website, she said, while the latest map is certainly an improvement over the previous drafts, there is still one neighborhood that has been inexplicably fractured. Most of downtown has been placed in the 5th district, with the exception of a few blocks that have been placed in the 1st district. Town Plot, and West Side Hill. This is not at all inexplicable. It is because the part that is put into the 5th District is the neighborhood called CBD, and that neighborhood is 31% Hispanic. And the other part that is fractured, Town Plot, is only 9% Hispanic, and West Side Hill, West Side Manor, I believe she meant, is 4% Hispanic. So once again, it's the same situation as before. She's saying you fractured this broader area that I think of as the downtown area, and I said the reason I did it was because the CBD was heavily Hispanic, relatively more heavily Hispanic, and I took out Town Plot and West Side Manor because there were virtually no Hispanics there. Keeping them in would have had the effect of filling them up with people who weren't Hispanic and precluding me from putting other territory in where the same number of people, among whom there would be far more Hispanic. So again, that would be construed as, it could be construed as vote dilution, and I don't know if it would be cracking, but it certainly could be construed as vote dilution. So my answer to Ms. Guest is, I would have liked to have addressed that, but again, that would get you into trouble with the Voting Rights Act. I have heard from people who have, want me to change things. I did hear from someone who is, at least, I call him one satisfied customer, Mr. Petro, who said, first of all, I'm very pleased with the second plan. The neighborhood I live in, Bunker Hill, is completely intact. Waterbury citizens, I learned very quickly, are passionate about the identity of their neighborhood and various groups as myself. I understand there are federal and state laws to abide by, and I know people want to keep the same voting area, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you, Mr. Petro, for understanding that I'm walking a fine line here. Commissioner Rodriguez had an email in which he said he has heard concerned various East Enders last night about the Booley Manor having been pulled from their district and the concerns they have with such a split. If that neighborhood were to be put back into the 4th District, et cetera, with some specific ideas about where. And again, as before, that would have, that could be construed as diluting the voting strength of Hispanics. There was a lengthy email from Pastor Rodney Wade, who, the bottom line is that he still supports Mr. Butler's plan, and he thinks I think he likes it for, I'm not sure exactly what reasons, but there are some reasons that he does like it, and so you have at least one advocate for that. Paul Pernaruski said there's no way that East Mountain belongs in the 5th District except to resolve the Republican problem of 3 incumbents. He's coming out against the change that somebody else wanted to make. And I just wanted, parenthetically to say that I have taken no account of incumbency in developing plans 2 and 3 after the first version that I worked with. So incumbency is, I haven't even looked at it. That concludes what I have to say to all those who were kind enough to, I shouldn't say kind enough, but were engaged enough to look at this in earnest and think about how it might be improved. I wish I could have done something more than tell you that my primary focus was on concentrating the 2 protected minorities in your city who are numerous enough to be the focus of the Voting Rights Act, and secondly, to keep to do this with whole neighborhoods. So, any other questions?
Any questions for my fellow commissioners? Comments? Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Morrison. Our next agenda item is now for public comment. I'd like to remind everyone that Sheriff Conway will announce, and I'm going to limit it to 5 minutes, and I'll give you a 1-minute warning when we get to that.
First speaker, Mr. Chairman, from 83 Bank Street, John DiCarlo.
Good evening, members of the District Reapportionment Committee. I'm John DiCarlo. I'm Public Policy and Economic Development Director for the Waterbury Regional Chamber. I come before you regarding progress on the districting plan. The Waterbury Regional Chamber represents nearly 1,000 businesses in our region on issues of public policy and economic development, including more than 400 that are located within the city of Waterbury. We are pleased with the direction the Commission has moved since the initial districting plan was unveiled several weeks ago. We're grateful for the work the Commission has undertaken thus far. The Chamber urges Commission members to make preserving neighborhood integrity a primary focus, as this is crucial to the new system providing accurate district representation. We also strongly encourage the Commission to do everything within its power to keep polling places as close to those currently used for state and federal elections as possible. There will be a certain level of confusion among voters as the new citywide system takes effect this year, which every effort should be made to minimize. In fact, lessening confusion of the alderman by district system will help increase voter turnout. Like our fellow city stakeholders, the Chamber has been disappointed by voter turnout in local and state elections. Increasing voter turnout will ultimately result in a city government more accountable to both residents and the business community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Next speaker from 613 Willow Street, Dominic Rinaldi.
Good evening. Dominic Rinaldi from 613 Willow Street. My suggestion, maybe it may not be feasible, and not to detract from all the presenters that were giving a good hard work and all that they did. My suggestion would be is to look at the zip code, postal zip code map, which has 6 zip code areas, but 2 could be consolidated as one. Basically, the 01 and 06 areas could be consolidated, which 01 is the downtown and 06 is the south end, and all the other postal districts would stay the same, the 05, 04, 10, and 08. The only drawback I have on this suggestion would be the population of all the areas, each one of the areas. Some are a little bit larger than the others, some are a little smaller, but I think it would be feasible in the fact that it will not break up the neighborhoods as they are. The boundaries have already been established, and it would keep everybody happy in that sense, and it should not affect the voting district or the jurisdiction of the state reps as well. The concerns of our citizens and our plights that they have in their particular neighborhood is being chopped up in different sections is not good continuity for all of us concerned. So I appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing, and hopefully that this will be feasible. It may not be feasible. Hopefully it doesn't detract from all the hard work presented so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker from 41 Pilgrim Ave, Jimmy Griffin.
Good evening, members of the board and commission. I've been listening to folks like Larry Butler, Kathy McNamara, and some others give them resumes before addressing this commission, so tonight I want to share a little of mine with you. I grew up in Waterbury, lived in Bridgeport, Brooklyn, New York, New Haven, Hamden, and even spent a little time in Indianapolis, Indiana, as well as Savannah, Georgia. I'm a U.S. Army veteran and was in charge of operations and training as a sergeant and held numerous positions following and during the Vietnam era in Veterans Affairs. After returning home in 1993, I have sought elected offices for state representative, mayor of the city, and I've served on the Charter Revision Commission, Connecticut Judicial Selection Commission, Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, and I was the president of the NAACP state and local offices. I'm a recipient of numerous honors and awards at the local, state, and national levels, as there are many to single out, except that I was honored as a recipient of 1 out of 7 Roy Wilkins scholarships in the entire nation. I've been on this for 20 years. And I'm a little disappointed on where we're going with this map. I gave you, I think, a copy of a letter that I sent to the Justice Department on August 12th of 2014, which basically addresses some of the issues that they're speaking about in the Voting Rights Act. We started out with 2 districts that I really liked, that were 2 districts that had a maximum potential of voting power and strength for African Americans and Latinos in the 72nd and 75th districts. That's state rep districts. I'd like to be clear too that automatic districts are not state rep districts, and we can't be a state rep district. So we just as well start looking at automatic districts and stop worrying about whether or not we're going to fall within a state rep district. As far as the neighborhoods are concerned, I don't think the neighborhoods should be the priority in this particular situation because the neighborhoods weren't disenfranchised in the past. It was the populations of those neighborhoods that were disenfranchised. And when I say that, I mean that here we are, we're talking about 36 or 37% initially that we were looking at in the districts that were drawn up initially. We've deviated and went away from that 6 percentage points. We're at a point now where on this map that you showed us here, there's 30.5% Latino and 30.5% blacks in the 72nd district, or the 2nd district. And that says that we have equal voting strength as Latinos in the district that we would have a minority district. So African Americans are basically losing ground in this plan. You talk about the Voting Rights Act, and you talk about the impact and the concern that you have about the Voting Rights Act. It's very evident that right now, many who draw new lines, and this is something that came from a training session with the NAACP years ago. Many who draw new lines during reapportionment will attempt to limit African American voting power. To counter this threat, NAACP units must know principles which govern redistricting as well as protections of the Voting Rights Act. NAACP members' negotiation with those doing the redistricting should achieve that result. If it does not, then we would go to a legal redress. What I'm saying to you is that what I see here is challengeable, and I don't know where you got this stuff about African Americans and Latinos saying neighborhoods take precedence over our voting rights. I don't know where that came from. I didn't say it. I was up here and I talked about it initially, that was a plan that I favored. And it gave us what we get on the maximum as far as the Voting Rights Act is concerned. That's what we should be concerned about. We should be concerned about satisfying that aspect. We didn't fight for this for all these years to come out with less representation than we had before. We fought to gain representation on this board. And the reason, and none of these neighborhoods have been disenfranchised in the past. Most of the neighborhoods that are worried about the neighborhood are the ones that had all the aldermen. We had no aldermen in the 72nd district until Greg Hadley was just elected recently to the 72nd district. We didn't have any aldermen over in our neighborhoods. You talk about neighborhoods, you got Crownbrook, Wow, New Pack, all these neighborhoods on the inner city of Waterbury And you're talking about now basically going outside of that. You're going outside of that. You're extending a district out into an area that's going to dilute the African American and minority vote. So, I don't know who said they wouldn't go to court or that we would be okay coalescing with some other groups. We haven't been successful coalescing with anyone. And so I think that right now we have to look at this very seriously because I'm not representing the NAACP. I'm representing the Waterbury Center for Economic and Social Justice. And we will, if this goes forward the way it is, be looking at a court suit because I don't see where you're going to argue that we agreed to diluting our vote over the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker from 101 Shady Brook, David Messino.
That's going to be tough to follow, but I'll do my best. My name's Dave Messino, 101 Shady Brook Lane, Vice President of the East Mountain Neighborhood Association. At a monthly meeting of the East Mountain Neighborhood Association, January 21st, discussion was held about the current outlines and revisions to the Aldermen by District project. As a very active neighborhood association and being proud of our little area of Waterbury, we couldn't help feeling a little concern for our neighbors in the Booley Manor area being isolated from the East End. If it can't be accomplished, we, the members of the East Mountain Association, recommend that our neighborhood be removed from the 4th District and transferred to the 5th District. Thus allowing Hampton Park and the neighborhoods east to remain in the 4th District. We leave the details to you and hope that our suggestions help and make this project run a lot smoother. Thanks for all your hard work and your dedication, and we look forward to seeing your looking forward to your final decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker from 39 Hawkins Street, Reverend Thomas Mallory.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and everyone here assembled. I simply want to get up to say that I'm in favor of the proposal by Mr. Butler. The reasons are that we kind of believe that one of the most important things about all of this change is that the people that are currently voting will not lose the location that they've been voting in and be thereby confused. So I am recommending Mr. Butler's plan.
Thank you.
Next speaker from 70 Blackman Road, State Representative Larry Butler.
My name is Larry Butler from 70 Blackman Road, State Representative, former Alderman. There's a lot of people who have fought for this Alderman by District plan, but I could tell you, I fought for this plan for good government. First and foremost, accountability. That's what a lot of people did. I believe that we might get a couple of extra minority aldermen, but first and foremost, accountability, good government. That's what the residents of this city voted for, I believe, and we have an opportunity to make that happen. Now, I must say in the last meeting, I had a little bit of an attitude because I had gotten the plan, the last second draft plan, like an hour before the meeting, and seeing all the changes in the 72nd district probably set me off a little bit. By, I'm an elected official, and the decorum that I bring wherever I go should be of a higher standard, and I will maintain that this evening. I must say that Mr. Morrison and Attorney Casbrandi, you are here on the request of the City of Waterbury, and I respect your professionalism as you come forward and helped us deliberate this, and even describing the process, Mr. Morrison, even when making references to my plan, you've been professional, and I really appreciate that. Now, going forward to where we are tonight in this plan, I think it's a little bit better, but we still didn't address a couple of different areas. All the boundary changes in the 72nd District, some other districts, the 75th District in Town Plot area, the Bully Manor scenario. That was a specific request. There was an answer given. I don't know if I really think that Bully Manor situation couldn't be rectified. There's a plan out there that does take care of it. Okay. I also like to point out that there is a plan that closely represents the state representative districts. A previous speaker said we should disregard the state representative districts. But if memory serves me correctly, for the members on this panel that served on the Charter Revision Commission, the goal was to come up with 5 equal districts closely resembling the state representative districts, if I'm not mistaken. So that is a part of the goal. Now, there's a plan out there that accomplishes that, and I would recommend that. And this doesn't have to be more complicated than it has to be. There's a plan out there that works, that achieves those goals. And in terms of the Bully Manor situation, I have to say that until 2 years ago, I wasn't that familiar with it, but after the state redistricting, I actually represented a sliver of the community, and in knocking on doors and then being successful and going to their community club meetings, I got to know something about that community. And I could tell you that in this whole configuration, if the state representative plan is followed, that the aldermen who represent the area will too get to know that community. I could tell you that their landmark is the Carrie Welton Carriage House. It's a very famous arch in the east end in town. Their pride and joy is the adopted spot on the intersection of Bully Manor and Manor there. And their concerns, community concerns, are traffic on Wilkes Street, the speed on the city neighborhood streets, blight in their neighborhoods, very much like every other neighborhood. And, another concern would be a utility that's digging up roads in their neighborhood. The aldermen that are representing them will come to know these things too.
Larry, you have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. I'm just saying that there's a plan out there that has the least amount of impact on the city. It achieves the goal, the least amount of impact. All the color areas, the 4th, the 5th, the 2nd districts drawn on this map, they will not necessarily have to go to different polling places. The only places that you made whole the 71st, they could achieve that by having them go in the West End to Chase Park House and coming up with one other polling place in the East End. In the 72nd portion that you put in the 73rd, they could go to the Sprague School, Waterbury Rec Center. Those are the only 3 big changes that need to be, just 3, as opposed to the current plan. People all over the city are going to be playing musical chairs. Thank you for this time. I thank you for serving, and I'll just hope that the right plan comes to your minds, because when everybody else is gone, we're all going to have to live with the plan that is selected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
Next speaker from 96 Down Street, Martin Spring.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Martin Lee Vining Spring from 96 Down Street. I just want to say I'm the vice president of the Waterville Community Club, and I'm in the 72nd District. And I really don't think we should be making this a racial issue, because I don't want to find ourselves in court. I'm also a vice chair on the Waterbury Human Rights Commission, and I'm not speaking for the board. I know the Reverend Mallory's here, but the bottom line is I'm concerned about my neighborhood where I live in Waterville, because we have people in my neck of the woods, if you will, we don't really have any representation. That's what this is about. I commend Mr. Morrison and everybody here tonight, because I know for a fact in Waterville Community Club we had Alderman Butler, well he's a state representative, he came, and we have Alderman Chris Orsini. He came to our meetings many a time, and I believe I'd like to see more people come to our meetings. But the bottom line is we got to do something to make sure that we have some representation in Waterville. Waterville has been ignored for a long time. I know the mayor's been working hard at making changes, and I appreciate that. But the bottom line is we got to have things changed in Waterville, because I really believe, truly in my heart, that we don't have any representation. And by the way, Mr. Griffin, I know you're a veteran, and I appreciate you, and I love you like a brother, man. We're all veterans here. But the bottom line is you made a mistake, because we did have a representative, and that was Alderman Carlos Palladino. He was in the 72nd District, and he lived up on Boyden Street. So, sir, we did have representation, and I don't care what color the guy is, white, black, Hispanic, whatever. I don't care if he's from Mars. The bottom line is he represented us, and he always came to our meetings. And the last person we had who was really included in Waterville, right next to the Waterville Community Club, was Eugene Oyer. God rest his soul. He was, alderman, and I used to go over to his house quite a bit. And even though he had a large family, he did come to the Waterville, rec center a lot, and he came to the 57 Handover Street where we had the Waterville Community Club. But we don't have that no more. We're at the old Waterville Firehouse. As you can see, I don't have nothing in front of me. I'm speaking from my heart. And I'm very sincere. I don't need papers in front of me to talk. I don't need maps. I already know what's going on in my neighborhood. I've been involved for a long time. I'm also deputy treasurer for the Waterbury Neighborhood Council. So I've been coming to these meetings many times before, and I'll continue to come to the meetings. And I just want to say, I want to thank each and every one of you people for serving, because I think you're good people and honest and sincere people, and this is what, this is what our country's all about. I always say, the last time I looked, there's still an American flag on that pole. So I don't want this to turn into a racial issue, because my family goes back a long time in this country, fighting Revolutionary War, Civil War, and all the wars, and they did it because they believe in this great country we live in. God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker from 250 Wood Street, James Monroe.
Good evening, everyone, commissioners, chair. I'm like Martin. I really appreciate you all serving. I know you got some hard tasks ahead of you. I would like to also thank once again everybody that came out to support whatever they believe in. That's part of democracy. I'm also a veteran. Been in the service for 10 years. Never drew a gun, never wore a uniform. All I did is play basketball, but I'm a veteran. To say the least, I've been listening, talking to a lot of people in my neighborhood. Larry, they think you did a very good job, and I'm here to support the Larry Butler plan. Please move forward with it, and thank you once again for listening to me.
Thank you, sir.
Next speaker from 26 Winthrop Avenue, Charles Tromley.
Hi, good evening. Charles Trombley, 26 Winthrop Avenue, Waterbury, Connecticut. I'd like to thank you all, the commissioners, on a short notice. You did a great job. I spoke with, I guess your friends call you Big Chuck, I heard, Mr. Pagano, Commissioner Pagano, and of course, Dr. Pizzuto. You're all a great company. Mr. Salvi, just getting to know you here on the radio, I really appreciate you backed me up the other day. I'm affectionately known as Chuck from Naugatuck, but I pay my taxes in Waterbury. I live on the boundary line, Big Chuck. Anyways, just want to make sure we talked about on the radio, Mr. Pagano, Commissioner Pagano, about the confusion of elections when you change districts. It's very important for everybody to get in the room with the registrars. Patty Mulhill, she's a great registrar. I think I know Timmy DiCarlo, Mr. Green on the board also, and all the rest of you are doing a great job in such a short notice. But I think it's very, very important to let people know if their voting place has changed, because I don't even tell you how many years I've been working politics in the background. It's a long time. But our last one, I work always at Gilmartin. I could say this public. I work for Senator Hartley. I volunteer. I think we should have 100 senators like her in Hartford. God bless her. And a lot of people come to Gilmartin, and they were coming out disillusioned. They'd come up and talk to me, because I talk to everybody I meet. And I said, what's wrong? And they said, oh, I can't vote here. I said, why not? What happened? What did they tell you? He said, we were switched to Washington Avenue. I said, well, you know how to get there, right? He goes, yeah. He said, but I'm very discouraged. He said, this has happened in the past to me. They keep moving me around. I said, well, geez, I'm very sorry. I mean, if you need a ride or whatever, I'll get you a grinder, But anyways, that's what makes it difficult. People want to go vote. It's the most important right we have, like our driver's license. And I think that's got to be made clear to the public. Now, a couple other things I want to mention on, because there's a lot of new people now that might be coming out to run for office. Now, they don't have a party other than what they belong, they're Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated independents. But you're going to be running up against, we're not calling them incumbents anymore, but they have the Democratic Party strength, the Republican Party strength, or else betterly known as the machine. So any of these new people, I want you to know, the Independent Party, I hope I'm not speaking, it's okay to say this, I'm assuming it is a free country, right? The Independent Party is a great party. You could be a Democrat, a Republican, an affiliate, independent. They will work with you, and they'll save you a lot of paperwork that you have to fill out if you run your own campaign. Maybe, Mr. Pagano, these things will be explained in the paper. I don't know. I hope it is, because some people may not run thinking, oh, I got to fill out this paperwork, I got to get a treasurer, my poor wife, my husband, to this, to that. It's not that simple to run, especially if you're new. The other important thing is there's a lot of, I couldn't believe when I heard, I didn't see it in the paper, Alderman Orsini, he's new, he's good, a Republican even, he said about 20 out of 21 districts voted for this. So that really tells you something. That's telling you the people of Waterbury are tired of same old, so to speak. They're tired. Some people where I live, we have to stay rep. He doesn't even recognize where I live, Platts Mills. I am tempted to run, but I don't know. I'm still thinking of it. My wife's saying she better think about it really hard. So anyways.
Mr. Trombley, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Pagano, Commissioner. But I really think what's important is I would like to see, I've been around a lot in these politics, but I've seen some great politicians that started out as on school boards, parochial school, public school. I would encourage those people to get in touch. Larry DePillo is very easy to get a hold of, independent party. Get in touch with them, because the Democrats and Republicans, you got to be involved with them for 100 years before you can really get somewhere. This is why the Alderman by district went off, and went well in the election, because it was too controlled all these years. And it's finally, thanks to guys like Jimmy Griffin, Larry DePillo, and my old friend, God bless him, he's not here, he's been hit some loss in his life, Mr. Bukowski. If you're listening, Mr. Bukowski, you were a big help to this effort. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Next speaker from 46 Hinsdale Avenue, Joy Brown.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you again for the opportunity to address you on this issue. My name is Joy Brown. I am a resident of Bully Manor. I know Bully Manor is being beaten to death, but you know what? We still need to be heard. I'm an officer of the Bully Manor Neighborhood Association, and I'm here this evening with 3 of the other officers. Last week I addressed you regarding the placement of Bully Manor as well as Hamilton Park Avenue in the downtown district. It appears that this request was not granted, and we are highly disappointed. Without going into the racial issues and the numbers game, I feel that we need to expand upon this. However, I do need to make something known. Bully Manor is 250 households. Where in God's green earth you've heard that we are 46% Hispanic? I'd love to see that number. I live there. The only thing that I can think of is we do have one apartment building that has quite a few transient people. They come and go, they're there for a short period of time. That's the only place that I can see where we would be 46% Hispanic. One of the things I'm also wondering is if the numbers that they're giving you as percentages, are they giving you just percentages, or are they looking at the actual number? If they're saying we're 46% Hispanic, I'm sorry, but we're only 250 households. Just questioning, and I'd really wish that that would be addressed somewhere along the line. Again, with that, I feel that Bully Manor has been the neighborhood that has been treated like the red-headed stepchild, and let me explain. When the house redistricting was done a few years back, Bully Manor was split. They took 4 streets from our neighborhood and put them in a different district. This was so confusing to the residents, especially the elderly, who had to figure out what district they were in, who they needed to vote for. So please don't do this to us again and put us in a different area. It's only going to confuse the residents again and other people throughout the city, not just us. Our neighborhood was also split as far as schooling is concerned. Half of our neighborhood is in the Chase District, while half the other district is in Walsh District. Makes no sense to me. However, Chase School is right up the street a couple hundred feet away. Why they've split us again, I don't understand. Now again, the redhead stepchild is being separated from the East End. Bully Manor has worked hand in hand with other neighborhood groups in the East End. It has not only made the East End look better, but has made Waterbury better. With the upcoming multi-year construction project on 84 to begin soon, it will be imperative that the entire East End is represented as one. This construction will be impacting the East End the most. We will be affected in some way, but mostly East Main and Meriden Road will bear the brunt of this entire project. If Hamilton Park and Bully Manor are in the downtown district, we will not be represented properly. The aldermen of the downtown district, although representing the entire city, will be focused on downtown issues, not East End issues. East Enders share a common problem, common concerns that are not the same as the downtown problems and the downtown concerns. Let's face some facts here. East End and downtown are 2 entirely different animals. Downtown is trying to rebuild. Crime is different, demographics are different, and the issues are entirely different. Bully Manor and Hamilton Park Avenue need to know that the work that has been done so far will continue, and that we have the proper backing that our representative aldermen can give. I fear that all of this work that has been done will not have the proper support because the person who is representing us will have much bigger fish to fry. I'm sorry, but I'm going to do my damnedest to make sure that this is not going to be allowed to happen. We've worked hard, and we deserve some appreciation for helping make the city a better place to live in. Keep the East End together so that we can continue with our vision. It is not only going to help everybody in the East End, but it's going to help Waterbury in the long run as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker from 73 Elcher Street, Charles Gretel.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Charlie Corretto. I'm from 73 Altyre Street. I am the president of the Bully Manor Neighborhood Association. I'm also an East Ender. And I say I'm an East Ender because I went to church and school in Mill Plain. I grew up on East Mountain, and I'm a proud homeowner in Bully Manor. So I know the East End. Our concern, as you've heard tonight, and I appreciate the support from Representative Butler and Dave, the Vice President from East Mountain, is keeping the East End neighborhoods together. That's Bully Manor and the Hamilton Park area that is looking to be redistricted in Section 5. If you pull Bully Manor and the Hamilton Park area out, it's like losing a last name. We're part of the East End. Bully Manor, East Mountain, and the East End neighborhoods, we share a lot of things. We share quality of life concerns. We are cooperative neighborhoods. We aren't just neighborhoods that share streets and boundaries. We do things together. We do grassroots initiatives. East Mountain and Hamilton Park both showed movies for citizens this year. We have beautification efforts together. We buy the flags together. We participate in scholarship events together. We also share a community police officer. We want to remain together. That's really what I'm trying to say. We appreciate the work of the commission. Dr. Morrison, I don't envy your job, but I appreciate your work. There's probably 110,000 residents in Waterbury. Please pay attention to the people that are speaking tonight, because we care, and we are what make Waterbury the city of neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Next speaker from 131 Garden Circle, Pastor Rodney Wade.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. I think, what I tried to do is I've been at every meeting. I wanted to listen, see what everybody had to say. And I think without a doubt, everyone cares about Waterbury. But the bottom line is everyone in this room has an interest. Make no doubt about it. Everyone in this room has an interest. We've heard from those interests on tonight. And so when I saw the first plan, listen, you want to give me 36%, I'll take it. 36% is way better than 30%. But we understood that we wanted the neighborhoods to stay intact. So what that meant was everyone had to be willing to make some sacrifices. Everyone had to be willing to make some sacrifice from every neighborhood in order for this to work. So I was excited about State Rep Butler's plan when it first was proposed, but I wanted to see what the percentage would look like. So when Dr. Morrison came back, and by the way, he has done a phenomenal job, when he came back and he said that Representative Butler's plan would be 30%, but then he went down to only 31%. In the same notion, he cut the 72nd district. So what I'm saying is, hey, African Americans are willing to make necessary sacrifices, but we shouldn't have to make the most sacrifices. So if you're going to take if you're going to take most of the 72nd away from us and then say we're only going to give you 30 to 31%, I don't think that's right. So I stand here tonight in support of Representative Butler's plan because, listen, if you're going to take the 36 and only give me 30, at least give me the whole 72nd district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speakers, Mr. Chairman, is Timothy DiCarlo and Patricia Mohal, our registrars.
Good evening. I just wanted to fastly approach and explain, there's been a lot of talk of polling locations this evening, and some confusion that's been going through the room as to polling locations and how they're assigned and things of that nature. Polling locations are followed under Connecticut General Statute 6-196, and what everyone has to realize here is that we are adding a new layer to government, basically. Right now, if you look at some of the polling locations, you know, they're 72nd District has been brought up tonight. So 72nd District, you have 72nd District lies in the 72nd, the 15th Senatorial, and the 5th Congressional. It also lies in the 72nd District, the 16th Senatorial, and the 5th Congressional. What we have to realize here is we're adding a new number. So it will be 72, 15, 5, 2. And so, so just so everybody understands that we're not, there was some confusion earlier as to if this line bleeds out of the 72nd into the 73rd. We have to forget these General Assembly districts. These are not how we're going to be doing this. Those are where people will be voting on even years. That's how that was put by the Connecticut General Assembly. They gave us the map for that. We had one ballot for citywide in Waterbury for as long as I can remember on a municipal ballot. That's why people have been voting in the same places time after time, because their ballots match up that way. The municipal is one universal ballot citywide. The General Assembly / federal ballot is assigned to that location itself. So there are some neighborhoods, you know, everybody keeps asking how it's going to be done. We need a final map so that we can see what you folks have done. At that point in time, we can then see the lines that bleed over, and these folks, you know, where do these folks, where are their, you know, where are we going to assign them at that point in time? That is how that statute reads at that point in time. It's our responsibility to assign the polling places for the municipal year now. The thing is, what everybody's getting caught up in is everybody's used to having the same polling location time and time again. You know, there are different options that we'll have to look at, and obviously we need a final map in order to do that. You know, we don't want anyone disenfranchised. We don't want any confusion. By state law, any voter whose polling location is changed or just because of an issue like this has to receive written notification. So it's not going to be done in the dark that no one is aware of this. When we did the redistricting in 2011, after the state gave us the lines the same way that you folks will be giving us the lines that are finished, we sent written notification to those individuals, letting them know of a change in their polling location. The same will take place at that point in time. But we're going to do the best that we can to make sure that there's as little confusion as possible, as well as cost effection to our office, so that we're not having to buy multiple equipment. But at this point in time, to say where the polling locations are going to be, we need a map. So once you guys have a map, we can then sit down and let everyone know where the polling locations are. For the most part, from what I've seen, there really isn't a lot of change throughout the whole city, so there really won't be a great deal of disruption. It is those areas that you're questioning as to what will happen. We have to decide what to do, how to make sure that those people, you know, are receiving the correct ballot on Election Day. And again, they will be receiving written notice at that point in time.
And also the way it's going to be, you know, implemented. You know, there's been talk of we're going to have them go to a different polling place, have two ballots in one place, because we have to always remember there is a separation between the state line and what we're doing here tonight, which is the automatic districts. And then, like Tim says, when we will get the final plan, then we will make the determination where they play. And everybody will be notified. No, there won't be any problems. We'll be open day and night to answer any questions. But we wanted to make sure tonight while we're here that everybody understands the state lines and also that this is the automatic lines. And we've been in touch, both Tim and I, with Dr. Morrison and also Peter Hansen from Harrison, I'm sorry, Peter, and we spoke with them regarding, you know, what we will be finally doing. But we just wanted to make a clarification here tonight so everybody's on the same page. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker from 33 Baker Drive, Alderman Chris Orsini.
Good evening, everyone. Chris Orsini, 33 Baker Drive. The more we have reviewed the maps that were here, I'm inclined and believe that the Butler Plan truly embodies the spirit of what we wanted to do when we redistricted the city. It allows us as Waterburyans to have clean neighborhood voting districts. It allows us as Waterburyans to participate in coalitions around the city. And it allows us to be the city we want to be without having the fear of any litigation, because as we saw, although Dr. Morrison's first model and second model are statistically superior, they're only by fractions. So I believe that if we continue forward with Mr. Butler's plan, his plan would truly be what we envisioned when we started this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker from 11th Steuben Street, Alderman Lawrence DiPillo.
Good evening. Lawrence DiPillo, 11 Steuben Street. First, I'd like to thank Chuck Tromley for his kind words this evening. And I'm started directing this to Attorney Casagrande and hope that he will, with his staff, review what I'm about to say. What was said tonight regarding petitioning candidates is very confusing, because in 1999 there was a court case in this city, and it was involving endorsed Democrats and petitioning Democrats. That case was the City of Waterbury versus Peter Tirado. Peter Tirado was elected as a petitioning Democrat because there were two competing lines, from the mayor all the way through to the Board of Education. One the endorsed Democrat line, one a petitioning Democrat line. And after the election had cleared, Mr. Milton Kadish, who was a petitioning Democrat, was seated as the last treasurer of the City of Waterbury as a Democrat. Not an unaffiliated, a Democrat, because that's what he ran as, a petitioning Democrat. In the case of Mr. Tirado, he became the 10th Democrat to be elected. You could only vote for 9, but 9 Democrats were elected on the standard Democrat line, and Mr. Tirado was elected on the petitioning line. He became, by state law, the 10th Democrat. He was not seated by the town clerk at that time. And there was a lawsuit. And the lawsuit was presented by attorney Frederick Krug, who I believe is still around. Don't know where he is at this point, but attorney Dennis Buckley, somebody who all of you are very familiar with, and is very familiar with the laws of the state of Connecticut regarding petitioning candidates and candidates in general. Anyways, the court decided that Mr. Tirado, a Democrat, was the 10th Democrat, and there was no provision in the city charter to prevent a 10th Democrat from being seated, and therefore he was seated as the 10th Democrat on the Board of Aldermen, not an unaffiliated or anything else. And it was after that that a Charter Revision Commission was called and then made the change in the charter that no more than 9 members of any party could sit on the Board of Aldermen. So this whole issue of petitioning candidates has already been settled in 1999, and unless state law has changed, and I don't believe it has, if you are running as a petitioning Democrat and you get elected, you are a Democrat. And if there are 3 Democrats from the same district, there can't be, there can only be 2. And the same goes for the Republicans, and the same goes for an independent or anyone who is running on a party line. If you're running as a party candidate, that's what you are. If you're running, if you're a Democrat or a Republican or an unaffiliated or an independent and you want to run as an unaffiliated petitioning candidate, then you indicate that when you put your petition together. And then and only then are you an unaffiliated petitioning candidate. So I'm not trying to play attorney here, but I know this is an issue that's going to be coming up, and I know you only have one meeting left, and therefore I would ask the attorney to please do the research regarding the 1999 case. The case regarding Alderman Mulcahy was a different case. And as Mr. Tromley said, there's nothing preventing the Republicans from putting Democrats on their row, and nothing preventing the Democrats from putting Republicans or Green Party or anybody else on their row. Just as the Independent Party is not prohibited from running Democrats, Republicans, Green, anything else. You are elected on the row that you run with. So you can be a Democrat running on the Republican row, but if you get elected on that Republican row, you are a registered Democrat, but you are listed with the Secretary of State's office as an elected Republican. Same goes for anybody who runs and gets elected on the independent line, regardless of their party. They are elected as independents, which is what the Mulcahy case was all about. And Alderman Mulcahy was seated. Even though he was a Democrat, he was seated as an independent because he won his seat on the independent line. So there are two different cases, Mulcahy in 2009, Peter Tirado in 1999, and I would ask the attorney to please do the research because this is extremely important regarding how many members can be from a party and serve in the district election. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker from 116 East Farm Street, Cliff Pettaway.
To Dr. Morrison, I just want to take this opportunity to please encourage you to do what's right and do what's fair with all the citizens of Waterbury. Because ultimately, we will be looking at the 15 by 1 plan. And I might come back to you in terms of your consideration, so please make that effort to do what's right and what's feasible and with all our citizens of Waterbury, if that makes any sense at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's the final speaker tonight.
Thank you very much, everyone. Next item is discussion by the commission and possible directions for council and the demographer. I open the floor to my commissioners. Mr. Pizzuto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, I'd like to ask Attorney DeBella if he could, just for clarification purposes, review what, through Attorney Casagrande's office, what Mr. DiPillo was asking, just for our own clarification.
Yeah, unfortunately, Attorney DeBella had to leave. He's under the weather.
Okay.
We will certainly respond to Mr. DiPillo's issue if that is the wish of this commission. Remember that your goal here is to adopt the districting.
Yeah, right.
Okay, but we're happy to further address this. I'm not sure that, and again, we'll look at the facts of the case, and I'm not sure if Attorney DeBella has not already looked at the facts of that case. But from what Mr. DiPillo is saying, it doesn't sound to me anyway like our opinion is inconsistent with the holding in the Toronto case. But I don't want to take your time up tonight by doing that. With the chair's permission, we'll have Attorney DeBella look into that and get back to you next week if that's your pleasure.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yep.
I just have a little concern about the deviation. It seemed like it went from a 2.1 to a 9.8. That seems a little close to 10%. I was wondering if you might look at that, look at the neighborhoods, and see if we can get that down a little. I'm an accountant, and I think that's a little close to I just think the 9.86 is a little too close to 10%. If you can kind of work on that, or, maybe take into consideration some of the comments about East End. Okay.
So is that a motion that we will instruct the moderator?
Yeah, see if we can improve on the deviation.
I'll second that.
Any discussion from my fellow commissioners? Comments? Jeffrey Green?
Perhaps we can call Dr. Morrison up to just touch on this before we give him any marching orders?
Sure.
Thank you.
Dr. Morrison?
I'm glad you asked me to respond now, because the trade-off you face is I can improve it, certainly, and you'd have to tell me which neighborhood did you want me to split first. That's what it comes down to. And the more important point I want to make is that, as I said before, the 10% is where the green light turns to yellow. And you don't have to be worried about going through a green light just as it's going to turn to yellow. As long as you're below 10%, the way I'm speaking somewhat as though I'm the lawyer here, but the experience that I've had is that if you are able to keep the total deviation under 10%, which is basically regarded as wiggle room to allow you to do what you want to do to balance the competing interests, to keep the neighborhoods whole, to maybe try a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that. It's like a domain in which you're allowed to work. And if you equal or exceed 10%, that's the point at which heads start to scratch and they say, well, why is it that high? And there has to be, there should be an answer. If there isn't an answer, then it can be problematic. But I want you to think of the 10% as a binary distinction. It's like green light versus yellow light. As long as it's green, you're under 10%. It doesn't matter if it's 9.9 or 1.1. It just has to be under 10. And the wiggle room here is really needed because you all have several agendas, one of which is keeping neighborhoods whole. And I can certainly get it lower, but it will require me to either split a neighborhood or to dilute the voting strength of one or another minority. I'm not going to favor the latter. I'm going to have to split a neighborhood. So I hope that will settle the issue, and you may want to rethink what you're instructing me to do, because I will just sort of arbitrarily go to some place and say, well, here's a place where I can do it without affecting blacks or Hispanics, and I don't think it's going to rise to the top and you'll say, oh, that's the plan we wanted. So any comments you have, I'd appreciate.
Well, unfortunately, I can't actually sit down and tell you where the line needs to be drawn, because you have more information than I do. I mean, I just look at the map and see, but you have more numbers than I do. I was just looking at from one plan to another. It just seems like the deviation to me was getting close to 10%, and it just didn't sit well.
Well, what I think I'm hearing is it really is mathematically ineffective. It's either 10 or 2, you're getting the same warning flag as part of the possibility for litigation.
That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying now. Okay.
Okay, and then I withdraw my second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion is carried. Any other comments, questions before we move on?
Mr. Chairman,
Falvio?
yes. I just need a point of clarification, okay? With the 3 plans that we've now looked at, the first one, it was basically rejected. And when the citizenry came in, the public came in and proposed exhibits, such as the Butler, what we're calling the Butler Plan. Okay, now I seem to remember that the motion was made and seconded, and we voted on that the Butler Plan would be part of the consideration, and we would look at it very carefully. And then Commissioner Templeton said, well, we want to consider Ms. Guest and a few others that have also done that. But I want to make sure that when we take all this data and we go sit down and I understood, are going to be drawing the lines, the final lines, and we're going to come up with a proposal to the Board of Aldermen that they absolutely can't refuse, that we're going to have the Butler plan, the other plans, and the 3 plans from Dr. Morrison before us so we can make an intelligent decision. Am I correct?
It's been my understanding that's why the proposals have been submitted as part of the dialogue.
Okay, so there's no need for me to make a motion to accept, use the Butler plan specifically? Because we're going to consider all the data, all the plans at some point for us when we draw up these districts.
That would be the item number 10 that we had proposed on the agenda for potential district plan voting, action plan. But I have not gotten to that stage of the game, in my personal opinion. But I understand your question is, yes, we would work on it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, Attorney Casagrande.
Just very quickly, Mr. Chairman, I just would remind the commission that pursuant to the authorization of the charter and the direction of the Board of Aldermen, next week, you have to decide on a plan next week, whether it be the Butler plan, whether it be Morrison 1, which I think everybody pretty much has said that that's out of the question. So it's between Butler and Morrison draft 3. And you as a commission, I would advise you can do some further tweaking, but again, I think Dr. Morrison his comments are well taken. When you start tweaking now, you're basically asking him to say, well, what neighborhood do you want me to cut up? And so you have to make a recommendation on a plan no later than next, is it Thursday night, the 28th? Or
I believe it's by the 30th by the book.
Well, by the book, yes, it's by the 30th, but
So
your
it'll be
last meeting
Friday.
is the 28th.
Yeah.
So unless you call a special meeting for Friday the 30th.
That's why we had it for the 28th,
Right.
in case we needed a 29th.
Right. So I just want to remind you that that's your deadline.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
I just have
Yes.
a quick comment. In regards to what you're saying, we're going to look at all these plans and we have to pretty much within the next week make a final decision. I don't think we ever got a breakdown of Larry's plan in its entirety in terms of a map and neighborhoods and streets, and so we can compare the two.
Well, my understanding through the chair is that Mr. Butler's plan was submitted as one of the exhibits. I don't know what the exhibit number was, but that plan was submitted into the record. I don't know what the detail of that plan was as I stand here, but that plan was submitted.
I guess my point is, you know how you've been handing out these maps on a weekly basis to us. Could we possibly get a breakdown in this form so that we can compare?
We got one.
I mean, I guess that would be up to Dr. Morrison to see if he could do that.
It was in draft proposal number 2. In the bottom, there's
Did we get a format? Right. Did we get that?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Attorney Casagrande and Mr. Morrison, I think, was it the last time or the meeting before that, I handed you the large copies, and there's the color, there's this one,
13, Exhibit 13.
and there's also at least three of these, which breaks down the districts, and then there's the the statistical information?
Right.
Okay.
Those are all part of the Butler plan that was submitted, I believe, as Exhibit 13.
Okay, but I think what Commissioner Templeton is asking is, she doesn't have this.
Oh, no, I have it.
Well, you do have it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all the copies?
Whatever came in Exhibit 13, I have.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
Is it on the site? It is.
Yes.
Any other comments, questions, concerns?
Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Colo.
perhaps it might be easier for everyone if we can have a full map before and after of each district, and that way Mr. Butler's plan could be, 72nd before, and then Dr. Morrison's 72nd after, and people could put them side by side and see how they change and affect the districts and the neighborhoods. I don't know if that's possible through Dr. Morrison or through the city, but I think that would clear up a lot of confusion, and a lot of people would like to see that before making a vote.
Thank you. Dr. Morrison?
I think what you're all getting is information overload, and the answer to your question is yes, that's a very easy thing to do. We can take, if you want to just think of the evolution of what's happened, started out with the first plan, went on, then we had Butler's plan, then we had my minor improvement on Butler's plan, and then another further improvement on that plan. You got all these plans, and I think what you want is one package that says, here's the 5 choices I have, and can you show me, in addition to the map for each of those plans, can you overlay the existing representative districts so I can see when we went from 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, what was that doing to the House district boundaries? That's what you want, and that's a very easy thing for the city's GIS guy to do. He just overlays that, prints it off, and you're set.
Actually, per district, Larry's plan versus your last plan would keep it simple. If we add all the other ones in the middle, it might complicate things.
Yeah, I think what I would suggest is that if you can rule out certain plans that you don't want to see anymore, and I would think that my first plan would be a top candidate for that, if I may speak honestly. Tell me which plans you do want to consider as serious alternatives, and then I can instruct the city's GIS expert as to exactly how to format them so that you can see what you want to see, because you do have information overload when you have too many different things going on, colors, boundaries, et cetera, et cetera. As I understand it, you want to see, for a subset of the plans you've been looking at, you want to see maps that show where the alderman districts would be, and then you want to see how those maps look relative, each of those look relative to each other. That would be separate pieces of paper, so you could say, here's Morrison's map, here's Butler's map side by side, and I can see Butler maybe conforms better or worse than Morrison's plan does to the state rep boundaries, and so that's something I want to know, and I want to see it on a map.
But we want to see it on an individual map, so
oh, you mean a
71 and 72,
oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
73. That way it's easier for people
yeah, I got you. Okay, we can do that. That's the same. It's just a variant. And then what I would propose is have a package of, here are the demographics for each one. So what you have is maybe a dozen pieces of paper and say, I've got X number of plans, and there are 3 things about each one, and I can line them up and look at them, and I can see what I want to see. Because right now you've got 5 PowerPoint presentations. Somewhere in each of them there is something. But it's all part of the record, and it's just a matter of showing you, focusing you on what it is you want to see, and I can. That's an easy thing to do.
Thank you.
Attorney Casagrande, did you want to address us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to belabor this, but Dr. Morrison's right. We're all operating under information overload at this point, but I just want to point out that I believe that you already have what Dr. Morrison described. That's Exhibit 15 that got into evidence tonight. It shows the state district boundaries, and it shows the relationship of those boundaries to the proposed aldermanic district boundaries. And remember, you're not changing the state district boundaries. You are adopting aldermanic district boundaries. You're trying to conform.
But we want to see how
Just finish. You're trying to conform those aldermanic district boundaries as closely as you can to the state district boundaries, because that's what the charter said for you to do.
Want to look at Butler's plan and the third plan. Don't worry about the aldermen right now. We just want to see Waterbury 5 districts.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure, because the 5 districts is the aldermanic plan.
Okay, but
You
we
mean
don't
the
want to
state
call that. We don't want to say that. We want to look at, like a puzzle. We want to take this piece and we want to superimpose it on the other piece, or, look at the two of them together. I think that's what we want.
Yes,
right?
5 different squares.
5 different pieces.
So the potential that we want to get out of this is...
Show the change.
Is the delta between the Butler plan and plan number 3.
Number 3.
Okay.
Correct.
So you want a plan that shows the differences between the boundaries of the proposed Butler plan and the differences in the boundaries under Plan 3?
Yeah.
Morrison Plan 3.
Yeah, I believe it's because we never had the resolution of the Butler plan in the same manner that we had on the resolution from the GIS department.
And the only thing, again, and we'll do whatever we need to do to get the information to you, but remember, it's next Wednesday night, tonight's Thursday, so and I know Dr. Morrison has demonstrated that he's worked night and days and weekends and holidays, but we'll get it to you as soon as possible, but it may be close to the date of the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions, requests?
Motion to adjourn.
May I have a second?
Second.
Motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.